Leading crowdsourcing practitioners share their tales, trials, and triumphs. This is Loud About Crowdsourcing.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Loud About Crowdsourcing. I'm one of your co-hosts, Nick Castillo. Here alongside with me is Will and Clinton. Joining us today, we have Lee Odess, who is currently the Vice President of Unikey. Welcome, Lee. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Now, I actually had the pleasure of working with Lee at our previous company at Brevo Labs. But for the rest of the listeners, could you please give us a little background about your career?
Sure, I can do that. So started out when I came out of school working for a company in the connected products and Lutron Electronics. So it was lighting controls, and I've always somewhat stuck within that realm or vertical, if you would, of connected products and what's now what people call Internet of Things. Back then we didn't call it that. We just called it connected stuff and lighting controls and that. But so a couple stops here and there throughout, and I guess the highlight would be started my own business with my wife in the Washington, D.C. area, where we were an integrator of those connected products and design systems. Ended up selling that to somebody local, and then joined a company, like you said, Brevo, which was in access control, commercial access control. Had a nice run there, and then a couple years ago, I joined Unikey, which is an Internet of Things connected product company focused in locks and access control technology and software. So I've always been somewhat interested and excited about the future connected products, how products that you use on a daily basis that you might not think about can all of a sudden become smart and sort of make the experiences better.
Awesome. Thanks, Lee. So one of our recurring themes on the show is asking for people's crowdsourcing stories. So I know during your time at Brevo, you guys did some work with Topcoder and kind of leveraged the crowdsourcing power to do some really cool stuff with IoT connected, or I guess we can call it connected applications if we're going with the old school term. But do you have a specific story where the use of crowdsourcing sort of clicked for you?
Yeah, so when we were at Brevo, we decided to start a division called Brevo Labs, which was going to take our core technology and really bring it into just a different realm. So we were going to leverage what we built over call it 15-year history. But we wanted to then move into some new areas. And we were going to have to build some new applications. We needed everything from PowerPoints to logos to everything. And we had a sort of set budget and wanted to go really fast. One of the things we wanted to do was we had an opportunity to speak at Salesforce's big conference called Dreamforce. So we had a date in mind, and I think we had like 3 months to get there. And at the time, we really had nothing built yet. So a friend of mine that I knew through the industry, we met. He lived local, wanted him to come on board to help with the technology side of things. He had a background in crowdsourcing as well. And he said, if you guys really want to do this, I think this is the way that we're going to need to go. Is we're never going to be able to spool up a whole bunch of devs and get everybody on board. But I think we could leverage the crowd, and I think it could be cost effective too. And I was real confident that we can deliver. So based off of his guidance and what he wanted, we took a look at it and said, you know what? This makes pretty good sense of what we needed to do. Plus, it was pretty progressive, and I think we were really excited about that. It was a whole group of people that weren't really afraid to try new stuff. So to us, it was new. Then we sort of dipped our toe in it. And that first sort of dip into it, the results that came back were pretty awesome. So we said, you know what, let's go. And if we're going to go, let's 100% go. And we want 100% go. And we're able to deliver what we wanted to for Dreamforce, built a nice base that we were able to leverage as we continued. So the rest is history from there.
Are you able to clarify a little bit about what you guys did at Dreamforce? Because I know I heard some stories back when you guys were doing this effort, and there was some really cool stuff, some really interesting technology involved.
Yeah, so with Salesforce, it was early on when they were looking to also, they were first getting into Internet of Things. I think they just bought a wearables company or guys that were working on wearables with that. But it was at the beginning where they were trying to also leverage their platform and to show people how it can be an enterprise system to not only connect connected products, but then also leverage data and whatnot. So there was great interest on their end at the same time. So what we wanted to build was a visitor management system that you could use your traditional access control system, but then you also could bring that into Salesforce. So let's say you were setting up a meeting and you did that inside Salesforce like a lot of people did, and they wanted to send a credential, so let's say like a barcode, that when they came into the office, they scanned it in at an iPad that would then send a text message to whoever you're meeting with. And then we had a whole bunch of stuff that we can get into, the other features that were there that were pretty cool. And we had some future thoughts about how to automate that entire process. The other thing that we wanted to do was we wanted to give the sense that the doors and locks and things within your building that because we did commercial work in your building were alive and they had a voice, and that voice was chatter within Salesforce. So when the door was opened, it would say, door was unlocked, or hey, someone's here, things like that. So now your things that were in your world, so like the virtual world and the physical world blending together to where, because now that they're connected, you could have a relationship with those things. They didn't have to be offline or analog. They now are digital, and you could, I don't know, send a chat to unlock the door, for instance, was something that we did, which was pretty awesome. Or just have visibility to, the state of what the door is at that time.
And if I'm not mistaken, we also used Google Glass to open doors as well.
Yeah,
right?
Good point, because there was multiple things in flight, if you would, at the same time that we were doing. It was part of the problem we were looking to solve, and which crowdsourcing helped with, was that we had multiple projects going on at the same time. So we had to spin up a bunch of projects. So yeah, one of them was Google Glass happened to come out at the same time. Made a trip up to New York to pick up the glasses, brought them back, and we thought something that would be sort of trick would be if I could have somebody at the front door, they press a button to want to enter, a camera would take a picture of them, it would push it to the glasses, and then somebody would be wearing them, say like the front desk person or the security guard or whatever could be walking around, they would see that video, and if that person had access rights, they could swipe to open or tap to deny. So the idea was, at that point too, was taking what's traditionally in the security industry, access control was not very progressive. Utilizing Google Glass were highly progressive at that time, mashing those worlds together and really showing off the capabilities that you could have if you embrace technology. Pretty excited about that product. It showed great. It got picked up by, I believe, Forbes or Fortune, I can't remember, on an article, which then that just sort of even brought the entire excitement level to a whole nother level, and really ignited what I would think was this belief of, we can do this, and we're onto something.
And I think one of the most impressive things for me, actually, just kind of experiencing crowdsourcing, at the same time that you were, is that we were able to come up with a product using Google Glass, and the community was still able to pitch in and contribute to the final solution, which I thought was pretty cool.
Yeah, I 100% agree with you. It was, there were so many things that happened at that time that were pretty cool about it. If you think about it, it's like Internet of Things meets a monster like Salesforce trying to expand their platform to crowdsource. We just did all of these things that were hyper progressive, and we're really able to show that it's real and it can be done, and it's not something that it had to be pigeonholed into one thing. Because I like to believe we were one of the first, or one of the early companies that were, we had a physical device that you had to interact with too. So, we're dealing with guys that are all over the world, and then they're trying to make we have to figure out ways of saying, okay, how do we get this person that's in Korea to be able to know what to build to make a door unlock here in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So it was hard problems that we had to work through, but exciting, I would say.
So Lee, it sounds like you guys did. Well, I certainly experienced that you guys made some really cool experimentations. The Google Glass being one that kind of just stood out because it hit the time so right, and people were at that time, gaga for Google Glass, and you guys doing something cool with it. But besides creating this like Tinder for letting somebody in and out of buildings via Google Glass, which is really cool. What's the you guys created the swiping mechanism, right? And then I think they probably found it. And I'll credit Brevo and give that to you guys. Exactly. Yeah. I'll credit you. You take credit, and away we go. But what's for folks out there that are not familiar with crowdsourcing in general? What's the square up like biggest value proposition? Is it like your size company and where you guys were with what you were trying to accomplish? The number one thing that Crowd provided was ... Like, what is the biggest thing you could tell somebody who's thinking about dipping the toes, like you said?
Sure. I would say number one was just overall speed. So the confidence that we had of being able to deliver, especially working in sort of bleeding edge technology side, half of it, I believe, sometimes is just the confidence to being able to deliver whatever that challenge is that you have in front of you. So being able to know that I had this huge network behind me, that if things got, crazy and we needed more resources, there was infinite amount of resources at that point, being people-wise, that we could tap into, and that allowed us to go fast. And so it could be confidence, it could be speed, it was the network that we had. The other one is realistically was the cost effectiveness of it, mixed with the speed and the need to deliver. For us to have to go spend the time to go hire all of those people that we would have needed. By the time we hired them, I think Dreamforce would have been over. So it just wasn't going to happen. And then also, like I said, the cost of being able to hire that level of people was pretty amazing, that we were able to tap into this sort of fountain of just all around awesomeness of people. And they knew, like the whole crowd knew all the contemporary and progressive platforms and languages and that. We had people from all over the place that were experts in different areas. That in a place like in Washington D.C. at the time, to be able to find experts in certain domains and then be able to hire them at the price ranges and that we needed to, at the speed that we needed to, was just never going to happen. So, I feel like we jumped on a roller coaster that was going 100 miles an hour already. And it just helped accelerate us to be able to deliver and have the confidence to deliver what we needed to.
So I got a quick follow-up for you too. You did mention that you guys kind of did a little toe dipping and you were like, cool. Then you were like, all right, let's go all in. It's something that, we talk to lots of different folks who are, again, looking at crowdsourcing and probably seeing it for the first time, or maybe they've done something small, but they haven't really done something substantive yet. Could you give an inkling, or like just focus on like what is like that toe dipping for you? What was it for your team? And then what did it provide from okay, we get it, and then you went full board, and then you had that kind of explosion into that productivity curve you hit there. But what was the first thing you guys chose to try and go do to kind of prove to yourselves that it could work?
Yeah, the first thing we did was we did a design challenge where we needed some screenshots or templates of PowerPoint for what Brevo Labs was. And so we did a pretty easy, straightforward design contest where we wanted to have feedback on like logos and colors and templates for the PowerPoint presentation that we're going to do. So we put it out to the crowd, and I want to say it was like within a day or two, we had 7 different examples back, which kind of blew our mind because they all were really good. And we had 7 to choose from, and it would happen in like 2 days. So we were like, okay, wait, like this is high level stuff, not super complicated, but some in the graphics world would probably argue with you that it's complicated. But it delivered to us, and we were able to get a taste of, all right, so now I can see how helpful this thing could be, as well as I got the confidence in the quality level. And then also just understood the process, because it was like, we were getting into things like, how do you launch contests and what are the legal things and this and that. And it's sort of like, all right, well, let's try it first. At least be able to speak knowledgeably to having an experience other than just one person, so that there's at least some level setting when we're having this conversation of what we're getting ourselves into. So just getting up and getting going a bit, and it allowed us to be able to speak from a stance of experience, and then we just built from there.
Very cool. And so I want to take the past experience, and we're talking about something that, it may sound like to a listener that this was, this was like 12 years ago. It wasn't that long ago, right? It was about 2013, 2014, somewhere in that time frame. Is that accurate?
Yeah, but isn't technology like dog years?
Right. That's exactly that's exactly where I was going next. Like
back when Google Glass was cool.
Yeah, exactly right. So we're talking about three trips around the sun here, and it goes fast, as we all know, for various reasons, right? And then, taking it from where it was, where Google Glass was like all the rage, and this was just coming up. And then what you've seen in the last, let's say even 12 months or so, Lee, with Unikey, and then also looking at technologies that are really coming into their own right now, like just, AI chatbots. And you were talking earlier about, Chatter and having some conversation to make a building kind of a social experience, right? To make things more social and give like a frictionless experience through buildings. What have you seen from an acceleration, and what does the convergence look like further when AI and chatbots get that much better and the other technologies progress to make the seamless part of it from a connectivity standpoint that much simpler? How far does it go? How fast does it go? What is what's the next 2, 3, 4 years look like for like a frictionless society?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So, if I define frictionless society, so everyone kind of understands what we're talking about, is this idea that when you walk into spaces, the places know who you are, and they know sort of the policies, if you would, of whether you should have entrance into there. So, if I give an example, like when you walk into a movie theater now, you pick up the ticket, or maybe you get the ticket online, but then you walk up to somebody and they either scan it or they take the ticket and they rip it and they give it to you and you go. But there's a barrier there to make sure to understand who's supposed to be there and who isn't. What's happening now is that with the introduction of all these technologies where I'm walking around with a phone or a wearable or even in my clothes, that thing is expressing who I am because I'm logged in, it has a profile, it understands attributes. And utilizing Bluetooth, it's talking to things on the end that are receiving that information. So maybe it's a turnstile, or maybe it's a person holding an iPad, or whatever it might be. It could even be the light bulbs and things like that, where they're saying, who is that? And it's saying, oh, this is Lee, and here's the rights that he has, the access rights to come into the place. And it says, okay, thank you. And maybe a sign behind the entrance says, welcome, Lee. The movie theater is to your left, and it's the door 3, and maybe it says even like heads up, that's a peanut-free movie theater, so you don't have to worry about the allergy that you have. So it starts to understand who you are. Same thing happens online. When you go to Amazon, you log in, it knows who you are, it knows your buying habits, so it offers you sort of a curated experience of your likes and dislikes and attributes and that. So it's just a more pleasant experience, and people are expecting that now on the brick and mortar side. So physical stores are doing that, or stadiums, your office. I mean, the office is the best example too, where right now 99% of the people that should probably be in your office are supposed to be in your office, but they have to scan in or go through a guard barrier to get into it. So they're doing that to keep the one bad guy out, where now with technology it's flipping, where these things are becoming smarter, that they understand situational awareness of saying, all right, you should be there, so I'm going to let you in. And then it's even saying, hey, I don't know that person, so I'm going to put the barrier up, and they have to prove who they are, or I get somebody to give them approval. So we're starting to see that happening, and that's what we're working on, and a lot of companies are working on in that end. So it's happening fast because more and more people are walking around with these phones. And more things are starting to have microprocessors inside of them. And and they're becoming very powerful where they're putting technology and embedded software on them that they can start to make decisions, policy decisions in that and compute locally that, or then they also leverage the cloud. So everything being cloud-based, that mashing of big data and small data to be able to make those things respond is happening rapidly. So we're starting to see it. You're also starting to see iteration and innovation off of some of the early things that people were doing, where before everything was brand new. Now there's concepts and ideas that have been in sort of the ether that people are grabbing on and are starting to leverage into sort of building off of those experiences. So you're starting to see great innovation in speeding up because there's sort of a library of information that people already understand, and they can sort of expand off of that. So I think there's a lot. I would say the other thing is the expectations that end users are starting to have and the demands that they have for ways things should respond. So I'll give you an example on that. At first, it was okay for things to be connected, like thermostats or lights, and it was cool to have your phone work with them. So connected was cool, but they weren't necessarily easier than the thing that existed before it. Like flipping a light switch was never really a hard thing for people to do. So their expectations were, all right, now I can control it with my phone, so let's turn it on, turn it off. But that novelty wears off because it actually sometimes, like if the app crashes or it's not connected, right? It starts to be actually harder than just going up and flipping the light switch. So people's expectations are that it shouldn't just be connected. It needs to start being smart. So because people's expectations are increasing, companies are starting to have to deliver on that demand in order for them to see adoption, which is, instead of people starting to see people buying it and selling it. So you're seeing a lot of people really focus on the experience. We do that at Unikey with the ability that you walk up to your lock and your phone's in your pocket and you can just tap the lock and it unlocks. You don't have to pull it out, open your app, press the button. It's a passive experience. And that's where we believe the expectations of what people are going to have of getting into like stadiums. I mean, these tickets you buy for stadiums now, they're hundreds and thousands of dollars. And every time you go there, it's like the first time you've ever been there. Now those stadiums just start to know who you are and respond.
So, Lee, one of the things that you mentioned that really kind of stuck with me and got me thinking right there was about how many devices there are now that have microprocessors, and how the expectations of the consumer now is it needs to be easier, it needs to be faster. We need to optimize all of this. I think it's kind of goes back to something that I personally care a lot about, which is privacy going forward. Do you have any thoughts about how all of these devices now connecting to everything and all of these services going back, even now ISPs sending browsing data back to or being able to sell it? Do you have any thoughts about how privacy plays into all of this and where the user's control over how much data gets shared ends up?
Yeah, I think I would start off by saying the companies and people that deliver value back to the end users are the ones that are going to win. So people will give information and do that and engage where they believe that they're getting something in return. And part of that something they get in return is trust that they're not going to be violated with that information. So there's this relationship that they have, and you're going to have to form a relationship with the end users that they trust that you're not doing something bad with their information, their data. I do believe, I do believe that you're going to have to give people the rights to, delete themselves or opt out, and at least have the opportunity to understand what's going on with their information and data. It's a conversation that some people bring up. I still am astonished, people talk about it when they want to talk about security and that, but you still see reports every year that like the most used password is still password, right? So it's like
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Right, and it still is though. But everyone's quick to jump on a soapbox and be like, "What about privacy?" And you're like, "Well, all right. Well, let's start with the fundamentals. Like, let's start actually giving a shit about privacy." and your data and stuff like that. I mean, you look at what some people post on Facebook and things like that, and you're like, those are the same people that are concerned about data, and you're like, really? So I think we're in this weird space right now where there's definitely companies have to be doing it properly. Those that aren't need to be exposed so that the good guys can win. People then also have to care and start asking the right questions and start doing the right things too. And somewhere in between those would probably be where we should live.
I think that's a really good point. I know the password thing, my wife's always giving me a hard time when she asks for one of my passwords. She's like, that's way too long and way too complicated. Why can't it just be a word? And I'm like that guy who doesn't post anything on Facebook because I don't want anything out there. But so I'm the silent minority, I guess, on the topic. But no, I appreciate the thoughts. How do you think you build that trust over time? Is it through actions? Is it through promises? Is it through contractual agreements?
Yes. I think it's a combination. It also there's no just broad brush that's going to swipe across everything, right? So it also, what is the service that I'm providing? Because the other thing is that consumers can't always expect things to be free also, right? So you give and take on some areas. I'm not saying you should give up things to not worry about your privacy, but you should understand at least. Now, the thought that people are going to read the terms and conditions of everything, and companies do a good job of making those things into gibberish and super hard for people to read. But so I think what has to happen is there needs to be an honest conversation that happens. You have to be on the end user side curious enough to understand it if you really care. I think the companies need to make it available, and even in some areas maybe push to be like, hey, just making sure you understand that this is what happens and this is what it is. And like I said, I think the bad apples need to be brought out and shown examples of, so that the companies, when they're doing sort of a risk assessment of maybe doing something, can say, hey, I don't think we should do that. I don't feel comfortable. Plus, there's some history here. Let me show you what happened to XYZ when they did something like that. And I would say companies like Apple do a good job of, vetting apps that go through to make sure privacy is as painful as it sometimes can be, to go through that process. They're trying, at least, I believe, in good and for the right reasons, are trying to make sure that the consumer is taken care of. So I think it's a triangular sort of expectation from everyone involved. There's curiosity on the end users and the consumer side. The companies need to do the right thing. And it will evolve just like, in-office harassment's evolved and things like that. People believe that policy is going to do it, but I haven't really, from living in DC, policy doesn't seem to always be moving at the same speed as the technology companies. So
They make policy there?
every once in a while.
It makes something there, tell you that much. And then, Lee, I wanted to ask you too. I know we're doing this via podcast, so I can't see you, but clearly I envision that you have like a futurist hat on right now. So I want you to, I want you to keep the futurist hat on. And which of the big? So give me two things here, or give everybody two things. Which of the big companies out there do you think are like best positioned for this? Like smart city, IoT, this frictionless society, and then who are some of the players that maybe folks don't know, and it's okay if it's Unikey, but others that are out there too that you're just impressed with that are doing some interesting things. So I guess like big platform players that are really well positioned, and then folks that have a niche that really need to be paid attention to.
No problem. I think you got guys like Intel, that are doing pretty cool stuff. Cisco's got some neat stuff that's out there. All of those big infrastructure players, which maybe aren't as flashy as some of the end products, like people typically think Apple and that, but I would actually think the infrastructure guys are doing some really, really cool stuff that goes unknown. I'm actually, believe it or not, I would actually say some of the big companies like Comcast.
I was going to say Verizon, Comcast, because they got the network.
We're seeing stuff that they're doing that's pretty impressive. I think, if I got into some of the specific, like in the security world, there's a handful of players, like an Alarm.com and that do some pretty cool stuff that you see sort of moving those industries forward. But yeah, I would say if you watch out for any of those infrastructure guys that are really focused on the pipes and the processing and that are really making it so that companies like us could actually execute. So if you look at like NXP from the silicon side, they're doing some really cool stuff, and TI. They kind of go unnoticed and unknown, but they have massive impacts on the ability for companies like ours and others to be able to actually execute products that people can interface with. But from the smaller side, there's some really neat stuff going on there as well too. Just got back from some trip in China and in Korea, so there's a lot of international influence that we're seeing there. Not specific to companies, but you see companies in their ecosystems progressing and pushing forward that I think will start to bleed into what we're doing in a positive way. I'll give a shout out to a good group called Think Big out of the Kansas City area. Real progressive, really interested in not only the technology side, but the ethical conversations, which I kind of find fascinating at this point. Like, what's the effect that these things are happening? And just because we can do something, should we do it? So being very thoughtful in the execution of the technology that's being implemented and brought in, which to me is pretty cool to see a company actually caring about that and getting good traction too, which is really neat on that end. So let me see what other small companies on that side. Well, we have a partner in the UK called ERA. This is a company that's from the 1800s of locksmithing and making locks and that, and they're turning themselves into a technology company. They've made some acquisitions in that they've gone from this like literally old blacksmithing companies to a progressive technology company, and I think they're going to make a massive impact on the way that people interact with their homes in the United Kingdom and then elsewhere. So those are some examples.
All right, I think we're coming up at the end of our time, so I just wanted to first say, Lee, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been awesome having you on.
No, I appreciate the opportunity, and I love what you guys are doing, so thanks for letting me be part of it.
Oh, yeah, well, I hope we can talk to you again someday soon, and yeah, it'll be awesome.
Look forward to it.
Thanks for listening to our interview today with Lee Odess. If you want to follow Lee on Twitter, Nick will tell you where you can find that.
You can follow Lee at Odess, Odess.
That was easy.
Super easy.
Yeah. Wow, that's a nice handle. Getting in on that. Lodess.
It wasn't I Love the Future 101.
Right. Frictionless society.
Frictionless society.
I would feel really weird. I would feel really weird saying that was my handle. I love the future.
Love the future.
It's my Twitter handle. But anyways, we missed it last week when we had our nice professional closing. So this week we're going to go the total opposite direction. And we're coming back with the cool crowd thing, which still doesn't have a real name. But this week we are talking about poop in space.
So wait.
Space poop.
Yeah. Space poop. Is that accurate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You sound like the announcer from SNL when he introduces the cast.
Thank you. I've been
pretty good.
So, all right. So you've probably heard about this by now. By the time this posts on iTunes and Google Play, it will probably be a little bit dated, but we're going to talk about it anyways because it's just such an interesting bit of crowdsourcing. And also, we have to say the word poop over and over on the air, which is pretty fun. So the Space Poop Challenge, that's actually what it was called. It was run out of the NASA Tournament Lab, and it was a competition to design a complete system for handling human waste inside of a spacesuit. The goal of the challenge was to create a system that will collect human waste for up to 144 hours, route it away from the body, and to not use the hands. It must operate in the conditions of space, where solids, fluids, and gases float around in microgravity, which most of us think of as zero gravity, and don't necessarily mix or act the way they would on Earth.
Huh.
Yeah. The hands-free approach has got to be, crucial considering they're out there spacewalking and stuff. This is not easy, right?
Yeah, you have gloves on. You don't. I mean, first of all, how would you get the glove into the suit?
No, you don't.
Second of all,
I
you
don't think we want to.
gloves.
I don't think we want to go there per se.
The suits are expensive.
No, but I would assume there'd be some sort of like bidet functionality there at least.
Like, wait, space bidet. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, exactly.
So the challenge closed out. There was a winner. His name was Thatcher Carden. $15,000.
Thatch.
There was a $10,000 winner. I gotta pull up the full. And it was a group. It was a 3-member team. They called themselves the Space Poop Unification of Doctors, SPUDS for short.
Buds. Like it.
Then there was a third place that went out to a guy named Hugo Shelley, and then a whole bunch of semifinalists. So this one got a lot of news time because it was just so unique. But it looks like they got a working solution. I think NASA's going to be going ahead and checking out the winning submission and seeing what they can do with it. I'm trying to pull up and see if they have the any briefs on the winners.
Briefs. I see what you did there. Can we just
and we're in the
can we just point out that this Dr. Thatcher Carden is a family physician and flight surgeon? Interesting. And he's long waited to be an inventor, or wanted to be an inventor.
And now he is,
mission
right?
accomplished.
But it's also definitely all poop jokes aside. It's that reaching out beyond 4 walls, and you find somebody in a near field domain or out of field domain that's like, wait a second, I could solve that. And kind of beauty of reaching out to the crowd, right? So it's a great, really cool example. And we'll when we put this out there on the blog, we'll link to how folks can go read about this, because there's some follow-up stories now from NASA, from our friends at Hero X2 that give some more information on this this incredible journey known as space poop.
Yeah, I mean, I just want to also note, like, back in our first episode, which I assume everyone who's listening went back and listened to because it's really good stuff. But we talked about, sort of the origins of crowdsourcing and how a clockmaker solved, navigation problems in the ocean. And yeah, like what you just said, Clinton, this is a guy that was a physician and made, he called it the Mace's Perennial Access and Toileting System. So I wish they had a little bit more about like how it works, but I guess that's going to be proprietary.
Well, either way, congrats to our boy Thatch. Clearly, taking it home, and
Thatch.
And we go way back. I mean, Thatch.
Yeah, evidently.
But it's a very, very cool example of just using using the crowd. So good kudos for our cool crowd thing. Is that right? The CCT.
Yeah, the cool crowd thing until we think of a better name.
Well, we'll crowdsource the name. How about that?
Yeah, let's crowdsource it with our listenership. If you have ideas for a better name for the cool crowd thing, it's not that hard. The bar is pretty low. You can send that to us. If you want to send us an email directly, it's podcast@topcoder.com. If you are interested in crowdsourcing with Topcoder, you can check out podcast.topcoder.com. We also have clips of the show on there as well, if you want to check those out. But if you can't or won't crowdsource with Topcoder, we're sorry to miss you, but we encourage you to check out the multitude of crowdsourcing vendors out there in the marketplace right now. Whether you do it with us or with someone else, we just want you to get out there and crowdsource. So I think that's it for today's episode. You guys have anything else?
I mean, should we just maybe 3 of us all together with the space poop to finish it? Like one big, like on 3. 1, 2, 3. Space poop.
I didn't know we were doing it with so dramatically. I messed that one up big time. That's okay.
If you're gonna be a bear, be a grizzly there, Will, right? So.
I guess so. All right. Well, I
Wait,
hope
does
you've
it grizzly
enjoyed this
shit in
episode.
Next challenge.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Lad About Crowdsourcing and our interview with Lee Odess. Sorry, Lee, that you got stuck on the space poop episode. If you want to follow us on Twitter, you can follow me at Will_Price.
And Clinton me at Clinton Bond, ClintonBon.
And find me at Hokie Nick, HOKIE Nick.
Hokie.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode. That's episode 3 of Loud About Crowdsourcing in the books. We will see you guys next time. Thank you.